So in this clip, we're going to be talking about overcoming limiting fears. I believe that we all fear something, whether we're conscious of it or not. Now, fears are not necessarily a bad thing. There are certain fears that safeguard us against threats and dangers. However, there are some self-generated fears that actually prevent us from doing the things that we need to do or from getting the things that we need to get. You see, these fears in itself manifest in ways that limit our potential and limit our growth. Now, when you start to look at these fears and start to experience these fears, sometimes they show up in different forms. And the question is, how does it actually stop you from growing and from developing? Now, the only way to do that is by understanding what those fears are. You see, Napoleon Hill spoke about fear in the terms of it is false evidence appearing real. Now think about it. Our minds and our brains can't differentiate between a perceived threat and a real threat, in that your body reacts in exactly the same manner when a threat is perceived and when a threat is imminent. You see, the only way to take back your power is to own your fear and to acknowledge your fear. So how do we do it? How do we own our fear and acknowledge our fear when we actually don't know sometimes what that fear is and we don't know how it impacts us? Well, the way to do it is to start off by looking at your life in totality. Look at it from a professional perspective and a personal perspective. And then ask yourself the question, the life that I so much desire and deserve that I haven't achieved, what are the actions that I haven't taken? What are some of those actions that I continuously postpone, and why? Ask yourself the question in terms of, what story do I tell myself? Why do I keep on remaining in the cycle of non-achievement? Why am I unable to move forward? What behaviors do I exhibit that prevent me from getting there? And the important thing is to actually own your excuses. You see, when you start to ask yourself these questions, I encourage you to write down these answers and ask them several times, because the more you ask yourself the question, the deeper insight you get into what the actual reality is. And when you write down these answers, I'd like you to observe your physiology. Observe the change in your heartbeat, the change in your breath. What happens to your sweat glands? What happens to your temperature? Does it actually change? Those are all indicators of there's something either right or something that's going wrong. You see, when you start to look at your fears itself and you start to acknowledge it, that's when you start to bring back your actual power. Now, fear is, like I said, not necessarily a bad thing. At times, it helps us move forward. The question is, when doesn't it help us move forward? Now, we have fears for several reasons, but the main reason that we have a fear is to protect us. Whether you believe it or not, or want to believe it or not, remember, our fears, just like our minds, will always do stuff to save us. Its primary role is to keep us safe. So even when you have those limiting fears, even when those fears prohibit you from growing, it's done for the very reason to keep you safe. So the pinnacle and pivotal question that you need to ask yourself is, these behaviors that prevent me from moving forward, these fears that prevent me from moving forward, how does it serve me in the here and now? Because it actually does. You see, you may say that my life deserves love. I deserve a partner. I deserve to be loved. And then when you look at your behavior, you continuously sabotage it. So you always blame work. I don't have enough time because I'm always working. That's an excuse. Own that excuse. You see, the way that that fear actually serves you is that sometimes we say we want love, but we sabotage it because we actually fear rejection. We actually fear pain. You may say that you want success and complain about not getting a promotion. You may think the system's unfair. But if you look at the way you engage, you may acknowledge there's some excuses in there. Because you fear that success, you fear the promotion, because you fear rejection. You fear conflict. And you may also even fear the unknown. So I encourage you to work through this process. Look at your life professionally and personally. Ask yourself about the life that you desire and so on. Look at the behaviors that you exhibit and that you're currently working with in order to prevent you from getting to where you need to be. And then ask yourself the question as to how do these behaviors actually serve me? Now, join me in the next clip where I'll talk to you about how you actually overcome these limiting fears.